We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Scott and Kristian Show, a feature podcast where we remove our nerdy hats to have an open and honest discussion about very serious topics. What's up, dude?
What's up, my brother?
We're in the same room.
Dude, we're in the Nerdy Boy studio.
Right? It's been so long.
Dude, it has been a very long time. Like, at least a year, right?
Yeah.
Since scheduling conflicts, we weren't living together anymore. You know, life got pretty hectic, so we took really long breaks in between podcasts. And we just kind of got to the point where it was our adult life was just far too difficult to meet up, so we were just doing it on the phone most of the time. But this time I was pretty excited, you know, to try and see if we could do it in person.
Yeah, and we're in the same room, but we are 6 feet apart.
6 feet,
I guess,
apart,
kind of, yeah,
ish.
yeah. But we're not wearing masks, so that's
who
stupid.
cares?
Yeah. So, but as you can tell from the intro, this isn't a normal Nerdy Boys podcast. We're still Nerdy Boys.
Yes,
but,
we are still the Nerdy Boys.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on in the world right now, and you know, we're not just one-dimensional people with single solitary interests. And with everything going on with, you know, in regards to race relations, police brutality, protesting, everything else in the United States right now, we thought it'd be important to have an open conversation about this. So that's why we're here today.
Yeah. It's gonna be pretty deep. It's gonna be a very important conversation that we have, and we hope that you guys stick to the end to listen to. Maybe you may benefit from a different point of view, or maybe you learn something from this.
Yeah.
You know, it's just we kind of both agreed that, you know, this sort of topic is not the sort of thing that we can just ignore, because usually we will stay away from political and social issues, you know, regarding our nerd podcast. And, you know, this just wasn't, it's just not one of those things. It's a thing where my personal opinion is, you can't sit on the sidelines anymore. You can't sit on the fence. You have to talk about it. It's not something that can be swept under the rug. Right.
Well, and much like our conversation at the end of our last podcast about COVID-19, this isn't really like that political as a topic. This is life for a lot of people. So
right, yeah, it's not exactly what you said. It's everyday life for people, and yeah, it's going to be a very interesting conversation, to say the least.
Yeah, so obviously this has all been jump-started by the recent tragedy of a police officer kneeling on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, which doesn't matter who you are. You can't defend that. That's just, I mean, yeah, anybody who's listening to this who might think that that's okay, maybe you should tune out because unfortunately,
if you honestly feel like that's okay, I feel I feel sorry for you. And two, I think you really got to look at yourself in the mirror and decide what kind of person you want to be and what kind of world you want to live in. And I think it's really important that you have an honest conversation with yourself and self-reflect and, you know, attempt to make a change inwards, because it's not okay. What happened was not okay and should never happened.
Right. It's not that it's just not okay. It's actually despicable what happened.
Yeah.
It's a grossly heinous thing, and you know, I don't blame the civilians who are recording it, not stepping in. Like, what are they supposed to do, honestly? And the other cops, obviously, you know, based on some new things that have come out, one of them did say, hey, let's turn him over. The cop said no, you know, but again, that doesn't mean much, right?
No.
So
No, because you're an officer of law and you're a civil servant sworn to protect civilians, and you did the exact opposite. You allowed, I won't even call him a man because that's not what he is. You know, a garbage person. That's really what he is.
right.
You allowed this garbage person to take and snuff out another person's life. Because over a fake $20 bill.
Right. Well, even
I mean, it's just like, dude, it's like,
yeah. The problem with things like this is people end up arguing in circles because I don't know if people struggle to focus on the issue or what it is, because I really appreciated because you posted something, a couple days or whatever after this happened.
yeah,
And one of the things you said at the bottom of your post, which is something I appreciated, is, don't comment about, riots and looting and whatever else, right? Which some people obviously want to talk about that, which is fine. There should be a conversation about that, but it's not pertinent to the conversation we need to have now. Like,
Yeah.
it's a distraction from what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And I see people, because people have to go to extremes to defend rioting and looting. There's no defense for that. You should definitely condemn that. But you can understand it, and you can talk about it in a different context. But when you're talking about it in the context of what is happening, what happened is a man was murdered by the police. And this isn't the start of it. This is the last rock that fell that caused an avalanche. Because this has been happening for years.
And not even like recent years. It's the only thing that's been happening in recent years is people have the ability to record the situation and shed light on it. And I think it's even more important to, share that it wasn't just a man, it was a black man in America. Something that is, I can't even begin to understand what it's like to be a black man in America. And it's been so trying and so like difficult to like deal with this like situation because, obviously I listen. So, I'm an Amazon delivery driver. And I'm in the car all day, every day. And so I'm always listening to the radio, and I'm always listening to mainly like sports talk shows, and even like this is taking over like their airwaves, and it's just like constantly talking about, and you get a lot of callers calling in that are African American callers, and and they share their life experience, and it's just like it's so eye opening. It's like obviously racism exists, and like that this stuff happens, and it's just like, but when it's like laid out to you in detail of like what people go through on the daily and what mental preparation that like a black man has to go through every single day, it's like mind boggling. It's so upsetting. It's like makes me angry too. Like it's just,
yeah. And,
it's
obviously people try to discredit some of this stuff by showing videos of other black people saying, well, we have victim mentalities and things like that. And those people are the fringe. They're not the like, you can listen to a lot of black men, especially, tell you stories about their interactions with the cop, and it's the same story.
Yeah.
Like, it's all the same story. But, as a white person myself, like, I get nervous to be talking to police or pulled over, but it's not because of the color of my skin, just because I'm a weird person, like cops can be intimidating in general, but I'm never afraid I'm going to get murdered by the police. I'm never afraid that I'm going to get arrested for something I didn't do, and like, I do wonder how much your experience has changed with people in the world now that, you're dating and have a baby with an African-American woman. Like,
yeah. So for our listeners who didn't know that fact, my significant other is, a black woman and an African American woman, and we recently have a child. So my child is half black as well, and that's a major fear of mine. And this isn't just a thing, just because we don't talk about it on the podcast. Or, we don't talk about it that often. That was like a very big fear of mine, like leading into having my child. Like, I was messaging countless friends of mine who are black males, and I was asking them like asking them to explain to me, like, what is it like being a black man American? This is way before any of this even happened. I was trying to have these conversations, trying to get in like a better understanding, and like I've had some really, really like intense, deep conversations, and like it's just like frustrating to me that like I just feel so ill-equipped to prepare my son for this, and like it's like really emotional. It's like thinking that like my son one day like might have to face something like this, Yeah.
Well, even with that, like I was talking to some friends and stuff, African American friends, white friends, Asian friends, whatever. Like we had like a big Zoom meeting, and one of the things we're talking about was how important it is to educate your children growing up and everything.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, as a white person, like I've understood for a long time that black people have to speak to their kids, especially males, like, hey, you might be treated this way by police one day, and it's because you're black, right?
Yeah.
And when I was saying this, and I said, but it's also important for white people to have that same conversation with their kid and explain that happens to people of color, and that they can help change that.
Yeah. Dude, I've literally seen a video of, there was a black man that was like on the ground. The police were attempting to detain him. There was at least like 6 squad cars, like they're all standing behind their doors, gun drawn on him, like telling him to like get on the ground when he's already on the ground. So it's like when you're exerting your force in that way, what do you, like, as a bystander, you sit there and think like, he's already on the ground. Why do you guys still have your guns drawn on him? Like it almost makes you feel like, dude, this guy's about to fucking die. Yeah. For what though? For the color of his skin? Like, dude, it's so embarrassing, deplorable that our society, isn't it sad though that you think about it? If somehow Martin Luther King came back and he's like, hold on a minute, nothing is fucking changed. Why?
Yeah, well,
and for those people, slavery happened so long ago. I don't have anything to do with it. It happened so long ago. A hop, skip, and your grandparents ago. Really?
Yeah.
That's super long ago, or maybe not your grandparents. Maybe your great grandparents. You're not that far removed as you think you are from the segregation times, from slavery times. This entire country was founded off of the back of slaves, dude. And for people to try to discredit or not acknowledge that, it's definitely a part of the problem, man.
Right. Well, and that's, I mean, if people want to talk about, slavery was a long time ago, that's a great place to start. Yeah, slavery was ended in 1865. And then what happened? Black people didn't have the right to vote for, well, actually, black men had the right to vote after slavery, but we as a country did everything in our power to make sure that they wouldn't succeed.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Black people would never have power in this country. And the funny thing is, right, I don't know, it's just crazy how things are how they are. We've made some progress, but it's not enough progress. Like, as far as what the conversation needs to focus on is police brutality, and criminal justice reform,
exactly, and systematic, oppression,
because it exists, and then people will, of course, try to change the subject. Well, what about black on black crime? What about these are all things that are important discussions, but they're not pertinent to the conversation we need to have now.
Right,
I'm
exactly.
sorry.
That's just a diversion tactic.
Socioeconomic issues, black on black crime, black people are more likely to commit crimes proportionally to the percentage of the population. You can say all that stuff you want, but you need to tell me why. If anybody gives you statistics about black people commit more crimes proportionally, black people are more likely to do this, black people tell me why. And if your answer is because they're black, then you are a racist. Because black people are not born to be criminals. Black people are not born more likely to commit crimes. It's not because they grew up in a house without a father. I'm sorry, that's not why this happens. You need to, you can't just throw out statistics and say, look at this. This is why police are brutal to them. Like, there's a reason why. And it has to do with how we treat black people in this country, how we allow them to live in poverty and everything else. People don't become criminals because they have a good life. I'm sorry, they don't. People don't become criminals because they're privileged. People become criminals because they feel they have no other choice. They steal because they want to feed their families. And disproportionately, look at the statistics. I'm not going to read them off for you guys. I'm sorry. It's not really our job to educate you. If you want to learn about this, you can educate yourself. The information is out there. Black people are disproportionately punished harsher than white people for committing the same exact crimes.
Oh, yeah.
Broken window laws were huge in New York. Broken window laws in the 90s. They were outlawed because of how discriminatory they were. Because black people were more likely to commit small crimes like breaking windows or vandalism or carrying marijuana or anything else. And they would put them in prison for things that white people would get tickets for. The crack epidemic is another example of just... And the worst one is how many black people we put to death and put on death row in this country that were provably innocent. Yep. It happens all the time, and the statistics are out
one
there.
Of the most famous cases is, and I do apologize because I seen it and I read the story behind it just the other day. Oh man, I really wish I remembered this young man's name. I think it was the very first case in America where they put a child to death. They used the electric chair to kill this young black man. He was like 12 or 13 years old. And then after, I would say 60 years or something, like I think it was like in the 90s, they proved that kid was innocent. Isn't that crazy? Like, why is it? And it's not the only time it happens. It happens time and time and time again. Because, dude...
Think about the Central Park 5 and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. The Central Park 5. Or, yeah, and so the circumstances surrounding that young kid's incarceration and then later when he was sentenced to death was the fact that he was... there was a dead body found near the house. They had no eyewitnesses, nothing. And because this kid was black... And I think he knew the girl or something like that. They charged him. The entire jury was made up of white people, and they fucking sailed him down the river pretty much, dude. And it's just like, and it happens time and time again, dude. The proof is in the pudding. Racial injustice exists. And I think we all need to say it loud till somebody hears us, man. It happens, dude. It's so... It's to me, it's like the only phrase word I can. It's mind-boggling. It's confusing. It's like why does it happen?
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, it's like the protests and everything else, including looting and rioting, is a way that we're hearing people's voices, and the message that I'm receiving is people are frustrated, people are angry, and the message I've received from my friends in the African American community that I've spoken with personally is that they're just fucking tired. Like, they're tired of this shit. Like, cause one of Joby's, one of my fiance's friends that you know as well used to play basketball in the gym. He's an African American guy, right?
Okay, yeah.
He's always in a good mood. He's always cheerful, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he has positive vibes. But, you know, when I was talking to him, like, he told me the story about when he grew up in Davis, and the cops pulled him over. He had like 4 cars behind him. They didn't walk up to his window. They just pulled their guns on him, told him to get out of the car and lay on the ground. It's pouring rain outside. They arrest him, and then 10 minutes later, after having him in handcuffs on the ground, they say, "Oh, we got the wrong person," and let him go. Like, that would never happen to me as a white person. You know, and like, it's like people who experience this every day, how can they be so like cheerful and positive? Like, it's so crazy. You'd never know that they experience this.
And like, I've only like received like partial versions of that treatment, you know, and so you know exactly the story I'm about to say.
Yeah.
And I'm about to tell what a response to the person who was with me even said to you.
Yeah.
And it's like, the thing that all right. So it was like, so we were pulled over by the cops, right? We were just like walking at night, and we're in Elk Grove, California. Quiet ass neighborhood. Nothing goes on there.
Historically racist city, though.
Right? Yeah, a historically racist city. By the way, used to have known chapters of the KKK. By the way,
burn crosses on football fields in high school football games.
Yep, exactly. So in case anybody didn't know, I am Mexican. I am also white. So it gets a little confusing. You know, white people usually generally look at me and like think I'm Mexican, and then the opposite for Mexicans usually think I'm white. But without, that doesn't really matter. Anyways, so I'm walking with a friend of mine, and to give a description, comparison to him, I look Mexican, right? Like, I think this is just when I came back from Arizona too, and I was really like dark because I was like tanned.
Yeah,
like
and he looks like a pale fucking ghost.
Yeah, he's like this like 6'4", like pale like
looks
white
like a
person.
cotton swab.
Yeah, they used to call him Q-tip even, dude.
Yeah.
Like, come on now. And so I'm wearing like a black hoodie, some jeans. I'm pretty sure some Vans at that time. I'm pretty sure that was like my style back then.
Skater boy.
Yeah, kind of like a skater boy a little bit, And anyways, so we're walking down the street.
But what was he wearing?
Yeah, he was wearing just like all black, like trench coat, like typical. No offense, dude, but like fucking like mass shooter type shit before the mass shooter like look was a thing.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm just saying.
I think he wanted to look like Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, he hella did. He hella. Anyways, sorry to get off the topic. So we're pulled over, right? So the cop instantly turns his spotlight onto me, right in my face. I cannot see a fucking thing, dude. He starts to get out of his car and like was like directing me to like pretty much like put my hands up, and like he was like asking me all these questions, dude. He was like asking me to like if I had any weapons or anything that could harm him, and like I was telling him no. I was like, no, we're just taking a walk. Like what's the issue? Like I kept asking him like, I can't see, like, and I get migraines. I was like that light is hurting me. Like, can you turn it off? He wouldn't turn it off. And he asked me then which was humiliating, by the way. I'm so glad this didn't happen like in the middle of the day, dude. Like, it was humiliating that this happened. He asked me to, because I was wearing a hoodie. He's like, lift your hoodie so I can see your waistband, and then do a 360. And I was like baffled. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before. I was really confused. I was like, why is he doing this? Like, what did I do? Like, I'm just like trying to think, like, did we jaywalk or like even like something like stupid? I'm like, what's going on? Like, and he like wouldn't tell me, like he didn't say anything. He was just like doing all this shit. And then like after like I proved that I didn't have a gun or a knife on me, he's just like, he said something about like how I matched the description of somebody, and then he got in his car, turned off his light, and drove off. And it's just like, I've had a small taste, but even I consider myself lucky because I think about if I put myself in a black man's shoes in that situation, I'm on the ground and he has his gun fucking drawn on me.
Well, even, something small, like imagine if your last name was Ruiz or Gonzalez or Ramirez. Like, would they have treated you differently?
More than likely, yeah. And it's just like, dude, it's just like, I was fucking scared, dude. When that happened, I was fucking terrified.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Like, I was confused. I didn't know what was happening. I had never been exposed to anything like that at that time. I'd like never like known that like cops had acted that way. I was just like, what is going on? Like, this is like confusing. And then to turn out, with all the George Floyd stuff going on, this same friend, right, that had witnessed everything. Oh, let me tell you the most important thing about this entire story, right, is the cop did not once ask him a fucking question, dude. And that's what really, and it's important to know that this cop was white. And what really pisses me the fuck off, dude, is that he did not ask my friend not one fucking question, another white male, but yet he's sitting there grilling me, humiliating me with his fucking light in my face, dude. I can't fucking see a thing, and I fucking suffer from fucking migraines and shit, which is not even like the most important part of the story. I was fucking legitimately scared, dude, and I'm just like, and then come to find out, after, the murder of, and I. Let me just a quick side point. I hate when people say the passing of George Floyd, because it makes it sound like, I don't know, like I just don't like that. I rather put it in the raw context of what actually happened. The murder of George Floyd, because there's no question in my mind that was murder.
Yeah.
And we'll get more into how we feel about that a little bit later, but we're just kind of going with this story at the moment. So it might be easier for Kristian to say it, because this same quote unquote friend of mine he's never once told me this. Never once has he told me this. And we have told this story many of times together. And I think it's funny how since the murder of George Floyd, a lot of, Facebook conversations have been had, and this friend is very outspoken in certain ways that I definitely just don't agree with. And then Kristian, as I actually come here today, he tells me this.
Yeah.
So I'll let Kristian go.
So this friend was like, messaging me all this shit because I don't know, he just likes to be a contrarian or argue or whatever. I don't know what it is. But he started telling me about the story with Scott, but he also told me about this other black friend who he had that, they were stopped by a cop once and the cop didn't do anything toward the black guy. So because of some other reason. So I'll just read what he wrote here. He said, as an ex-Marxist, near-anarchist, and ex-leftist, I actually do not only see one side, which he does. But he said, there was a time I would agree with you and Scott. I believe that black people were being targeted and oppressed. Then I looked into it. They're not. They get more media coverage, so it seems as though they are. Every time there is an issue between a white and black person, they instantly label it as racially motivated, even if it is not, or there is no indication of such. A white man and black man can be fighting because one of them fucked the other's girlfriend, and the media will say racist white man has sex with black man's girlfriend and gets knocked out. I used to try to argue points of blacks being oppressed and always got my ass handed to me in debate. Why? Because they're not oppressed, and there is far more evidence to support that claim than the claim that they are oppressed or there is systematic racism. I'll amend what he says. He says why, and then goes and gives some bullshit reason. The answer why is because he was not prepared for those arguments. People don't win and lose debates because they're right or wrong. People win and lose debates based on the amount of information they have to debate the topic. That is 100% the truth. Ben Shapiro is well known for winning debates and owning people, but it's because he prepares endlessly for these debates and questions. That's his whole life. So of course he's going to be more well prepared than someone who's just an activist showing up to ask a question. Anyway, I'll continue. I remember a time I was walking with Scott in Elk Grove by the old apartments. I don't know if he remembers this or not, but he and I were walking. A white cop stopped us. The cop left me alone, but made Scott, who looks pretty white, especially back then, made him lift his shirt and spin in a slow circle. I thought it was a bit odd he targeted Scott. I was like, Scott ain't black. Sure, he's partly Mexican, but he don't look it. But it hit me months later when I was walking with my black friend. Scott liked to dress a bit thuggy. Not super thuggy, but he sagged and wore baggy shirts and such. If you dress like a thug, you're gonna get stopped. A lot of black people dress a bit like thugs. Not all of them, but a lot of them, especially in the hood. My black friend did not dress thuggy. He never sagged and hated people who did. When he and I got stopped by a white cop, they were both very respectful to each other. My friend always got called things like Uncle Tom and wanna be white and whitewash because he refused to believe that he was oppressed. He was well-spoken and very smart. He goes on, but I'm sorry. That is racist language.
Yeah.
To say you dress thuggy, you look like a thug, you can believe that if you want, and if you dress like a thug, you'll be stopped. But that's just the problem, isn't it? Isn't that the root of the problem?
Yeah.
If you look a certain way, you'll be stopped. And thugs, people who dress like thugs, what are they dressing like? They're dressing like people who are black, people who sag their pants, People who, and why do black people sag their pants? It comes from prison culture, where black people are disproportionately sent. It's the root of the problem. And we live in a country that says it's okay to profile people because of that. It's okay to think that because you're dressing in a way that we have deemed wrong, because it's a way that black people dress, then you will be stopped.
Yeah.
That is the problem. And that's where the conversation needs to be had. And I have nothing to say to that. I'm not going to respond to someone who says things like that, because to me, there's no way to have that conversation. And
yeah, exactly.
And it's not my job to show him proof. He says there's no proof. I've looked into it. There's no proof of systematic racism. But there is. And, if our sources contradict each other, well, I'm not going to, he sent me videos of black people saying it doesn't exist and all this stuff. I don't care. I'll listen to it. Like, Candace Owens is the big one. Candace Owens is someone who, if you guys are not familiar with, is an African-American young woman who, went on a rant about how black people, cater to the worst of their kind. They're the only race that does it. They take criminals and make them look like heroes when they die and this and that. And, sometimes she brings up some good points. I'll give her that. But those are discussions we can have away from this. But then she says things that really reveal her internalized racism. And that's just the truth. And she goes on and hits every single talking point that Republicans have when it comes to African Americans and the justice system and everything else. And I 100% believe that she wants to run for office one day as a Republican. And, she's like, why don't we talk about Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell and all these successful Republican black people? Why do we always talk about the thugs and the she's hitting all the talking points. But I'm sorry, she doesn't speak for the black community. You know who does? All the people out there right now on the streets, protesting, speaking with white people, trying to help educate them, telling them we need your help to do this.
Yeah.
And sometimes they say things like we should abolish police that I don't agree with. But there's a start. There's a conversation to be had.
Yeah.
So
I definitely think there needs to be a reform.
Yeah.
I definitely think policies and procedures need to be looked over. I think the way they profile people needs to be completely changed. And I can tell you exactly the process of getting into being a police officer. And this is in California. Keep in mind, this process is not as extensive in other parts of the country. Some parts of the country, you only have to join the fucking police academy and you go through your interview process, and I'm sure it's pretty lengthy. And then once you get into the academy, you do your 6 months and then you're pretty much on the force. So, but in California, it's a little bit more extensive, but even now thinking about it, it's not as extensive as it should be. It's really not, dude. It's really fucking not. You have to have an AA. It does not matter what subject it is. Does not matter. They don't care. They actually said, I prefer that you don't do criminal justice because I feel that it makes you more well-rounded as a person or something like that. And when it also benefits you, so when you're done being, you retire from being a police officer, you'll have something else to fall back on if you don't want to just be retired. Then, there's a series of polygraph tests, in-person interviews with like police chiefs and recruiters and drug tests and a lot of those things. I won't pretend to know what can disqualify you, but knowing some of the cases that are out there, and trust me, there are plenty of them. It's not just George Floyd. It does not start and end with George Floyd.
Right.
There is a long list, and that's mildly putting it. There's a long list of names that we can even provably show proof of. And isn't that sad and pathetic? Because if you really think about it, the days before camera phones, before social media, how many countless cases are there out there where police murdered a black man, a black woman, or a black child, and got away with it because there wasn't such a thing as social media or camera phones and recording and uploading on live and Facebook Live and all those things. And you know, but to my point, there is proof that some of these police officers had priors or had in the case of George Floyd, the officer that was kneeling on his neck and murdered him. He had, what was it, like 17 complaints?
Yeah, he had a lot.
I know it was more than 13. It was either 13, 15, or 17. I remember it was an odd number, and I remember it was above 13. But it's like, how many complaints can one officer get before they're kicked off the force? I mean, did this guy have priors to being a police officer? Because I'm 100% sure, there are police officers out there that do, and I think it should automatically disqualify you. I don't think so. And yes, people can change. People can be reformed. Yes, they can. But in certain positions, it should not be allowed.
Well, with police especially, I mean, police one of the things that is an issue in the United States is that police really protect their own. Like, I think, even, I don't know if you saw, Dave Chappelle put out something yesterday that's called 846, the amount of time the cop was on George Floyd's neck. But it's like 30 minutes long, and one of the things he was saying is hey, us as black people, look what happened when one of us got killed. Look at what we're doing, And so with cops, when one of them is attacked, they feel like, they have to do the same thing. Like it's kind of like a clan mentality. And that's one of the issues within law enforcement is like, you could commit heinous crimes as a police officer in Sacramento and then go get a job in Vacaville.
Yeah.
Like they'll just hire you. Yeah. Like you just move departments quietly and nobody says a thing. And that's an issue because bad cops should get kicked out. And there are good cops within the system that try to change things, that try to go about it the right way. Even Chappelle was talking about this as well. A black cop in L.A. who witnessed this white woman cop do something wrong. He reported her. He ended up getting fired. And then he tried every legal process to do the right thing and then ended up writing a manifesto and killing a bunch of cops. But, like the point is, like, he tried to do the right thing and he was ousted. And that's an issue. These are issues. Yeah. And one of the other big things is cops largely are overworked. We give them everything we don't want to deal with in society. Dog running away down the street, call the cops. Homeless, call the cops. Why are cops being told to deal with homeless people? That shouldn't be their job, right? We should get cops going back to the things they should be doing. And if you say defund the police, and you mean that, like take money and put it towards other programs, like mental health programs to help homeless people or rehab facilitation for homeless people or whatever else, so cops don't have to continuously arrest them, book them, release them, and it just repeats the cycle. Like, there are ways to take money from law enforcement and put it towards things that can help, and then the police have an easier job. They can get back to what they should be doing. Yeah. But we entrust cops with literally everything we don't want to deal with. They deal with the worst in society. And a lot of them are stressed. A lot of them are overworked. They go to situations. They don't know what the fuck is going on. They're scared, whatever. But that would happen a lot less if we didn't rely on them for literally everything. Now, of course, there are really bad cops. There are good cops. Unfortunately, that takes away from the conversation we need to have. Right. The conversation needs to be about how do we fix the fundamental systematic issues in our law enforcement, in our justice system, because criminal justice is another place in our courts where we disproportionately treat black people worse. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with that. And before I forget, so there is a saying that's kind of going around now, and it's not the exact saying, but you'll kind of get the picture, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the whole argument of, oh, not all cops are bad, right? So if you have 5 bad cops out of 10,
Mm-hmm.
and only 2 of the non-bad cops speak up against those 5, you then have 8 bad cops. We need more of cops standing up. And I know it's a thing because I've heard it on the radio. There's been a lot of either ex-police or current police that wouldn't even divulge what city they were in or what their name was because they were that scared of the repercussions. But they shed light and things are becoming very more clear of how police are ran. And it's not right. It's not right at all. And one thing I think, and it is a bit of a slippery slope, but I think one thing that needs to happen, these police unions need to be abolished, dude. I think they need to be taken down because that is one of the root of what is wrong.
Yeah.
The reason police aren't just arrested on the spot is because they had the protection of the police union.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't pretend to know all the nuances or the ins and outs. But even I think it was either the commissioner or the chief of police in Minnesota, even openly in an interview, was saying, wow, I was surprised that he was arrested that fast.
Well, I mean, initially, the issue, they held this press conference and pretty much said, yeah, nothing's going to change, status quo. Like, right after this happened, they held, and it's like, of course people are going to fucking riot. Like, are you kidding me? Like,
yeah, I mean, so there's a couple things that kind of like happening, right? You have your peaceful protests that are happening across the country, and I personally, my ideals align more with that. You know, I don't believe so much in the rioting and the looting. Or I don't necessarily disagree with rioting, but what I disagree with is like the looting and stuff like that.
yeah. Well,
That's like where I kind of lie on it, but I understand being so angry to the point of rioting.
yeah.
You know?
Unfortunately, because of things like rioting and looting, like the message gets muddied or lost or whatever, and then that's what people want to talk about. And there's a place for that conversation. Unfortunately, I know it seems so related because they're a result of what happened and a result of the protests, but it's completely unrelated in the way that we won't get anything done if we try to have a conversation about how to fix these issues and you just bring up rioting and looting. Like,
Right.
because then all of a sudden we're talking about that, which is
Right.
fine. That's a good conversation to have, but not in this context. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. Like, I think it's despicable to destroy people's businesses, and I don't like all these people saying, oh, well, property can be rebuilt, blah, blah, blah. It's not as bad as murdering someone. Yeah, but guess what? In riots, people get murdered too. So are you going to say that's not as bad? Because they're both murders. Like, 2 wrongs don't make a right. We all grow up learning that. It's not okay to murder someone in cold blood like the way that a black man was murdered by a white cop. That's despicable. It's also not okay to destroy people's businesses and steal their property. I don't care if it's Target and they're this rich corporation. You know who else? Target as a company might not care, but you know who might need some counseling and therapy after watching that is the people working in those fucking stores, watching it happen, maybe being attacked. Like, this doesn't just affect corporations. It affects people on a human level. And for me, that's not okay. And again, now we're distracted, and I'm talking about this. But this isn't important when it comes to what needs to happen. And it's not just law enforcement and criminal justice. We need to change socially as well. Yeah. We need to change the way we react to people in general, the way we think about people. Because as a white person, I can tell you growing up, we joked about racism. We didn't experience it. We joked about it. It was a joke. It was funny.
Well, you look at,
think
like, about, okay, yeah, exactly. Talking about and racism is not funny.
Right.
And it's totally not funny. But you think about, I would say 90% of comedians, what is their material on?
Yeah.
Racist. Like, the shit that they say is racist. And then they laugh it off. And, it's just, it's very normalized. And, yeah, it's like, but you know what's not normal? A man dying under the pressure of another man's knee.
Right.
Where nowhere can you find in a police handbook, training guide, or anything that they teach you to kneel on somebody and put pressure on somebody's neck as means of detaining somebody.
Yeah.
This man multiple times said, "I will not resist. Put me in the back of your car." In the beginning of the video, George Floyd said, "I'm not resisting." They have one man on his neck. They have one man like on his lower
legs,
back,
yeah,
and one man on his legs. 3 men holding one man down with, and I'm pretty sure he already had his handcuffs on, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he had handcuffs on.
I'm pretty sure he already had handcuffs on. He posed no threat to them, and yet that monster, because that's what. Let's make no mistake about it. That guy is a fucking monster.
Yeah.
Took his life, and is it just me, or do you watch that video and look at that guy's face and not get the sense that he enjoyed doing that?
Not only that, I've only seen bits of it because
and it's fucking disturbing, dude.
I can't bring myself to watch the whole thing because like it just would drain the soul out of me. But like the bit I've seen, because I made a video like with music I composed, like showing different like protests, and then there's like parts where it's very discordant and like the beat goes blah 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 blah, and it's like every time that happens, it's him kneeling on his neck. And because it's like your heartbeat is faster, like it's supposed to be symbolic. I don't know. I'm weird. Anyway, but even that, you can see him putting more pressure and like letting a little off and putting more pressure. Like he's doing it on purpose. And the thing is, these things will continue to happen. Like cops will put their knee on people's necks, even though they're not supposed to. But like, if someone's like super cracked out to like subdue them for like 10 seconds, you can understand 10 seconds, 9 fucking minutes. Like this is where these things like can make sense in like small context, but in for 9 there's no reason to ever do that. And that's where you get into this issue. Like police brutality is a real thing.
Yeah.
But how do we stop it? Like how do we give cops the tools they need to do their job, but also to prevent them from killing people?
I think it's a long list, man, and it's not going to happen overnight. But
of course.
Here's the thing, right? Is there's no such thing as being perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
But does that not mean that we should not strive for perfection?
Yeah, I mean, we should always try to do the best we can.
There's not going to be such a thing as the perfect society, but should we not strive for better? Should we not strive as humans to fight for all people's equality and rights, not just our own based off our skin color? Yeah, exactly. And I think it in my opinion, if you're asking me, it starts with police reform. I think deeper levels of vetting needs to happen. I think there needs to be extensive and lengthy background checks and social media checks to find certain behaviors from police or potential candidates of being a police officer that need to get vetted out and weeded out, and let the good candidates stand on their merit. And I think an extreme overhaul of police procedures needs to happen. I think the police labor union needs to be disbanded. I don't feel that because you're an officer of the law does not give you a license to kill, and you should not be protected for it. I think there needs to be the understatement of the year, it needs to be an overhaul of the criminal justice system. How many innocent black men are either incarcerated or sitting on death row at the moment? I mean, the numbers are crazy. I mean, you think about it this way. What's the name of the I don't know his name, but everybody knows about it. It's the college Olympic swimmer who raped a woman.
Brock Turner.
Yeah, Brock Turner. And it was proved that he raped her, and he was given. It's important to know he's a white man. He was given 6 months in jail and released on 3 for good behavior. Where you have people doing 20-year bids on fucking marijuana. Are you kidding? And people still have the gall, the stones to sit there and say that systematic oppression and racial injustice doesn't happen?
Yeah, anybody who says racism is like gone or whatever, like it's ridiculous to me. Like, just look up. I promise you, you'll find some crazy shit. Just look up the discrimination against Asian Americans when Trump was saying Chinese virus. Look it up. There's endless reports of Asian Americans being targeted by people, attacked. Like, we as a society have issues as a society. It's not just a police problem. In this case, obviously that's the focus, but there's a social issue as well. There's a social issue to all of this, and that's where it just gets so complex.
Do I for 1 minute think racism can ever be snuffed out? No. It'll never be snuffed out. But what I said earlier, should we not strive for perfection? You may never reach it, right? But should you ever stop pushing for it?
Of course not. Even like people get upset about like changing terms or the language we use. People are like, it's just words, right?
But words matter, though.
Think about how we describe poor white neighborhoods. White trash. It's a joke. It's funny. They're poor. They're poor white people. Think about how we describe poor black neighborhoods. High risk. At risk. Why? Is it because you're at risk if you go there of getting hit, murdered, whatever?
The ghetto.
Right?
The projects.
We don't use the same language to describe poor white, because
there's also a point. Go ahead, but there is a point that I want to make about language that we use.
So we know there's a class issue as well in the United States. We generally view poor people very poorly, right? We have a bad opinion of poor people as a country, but we treat poor black people significantly worse than poor white people.
Oh yeah, of course.
So, go ahead. Yeah.
And talking about class issues and social issues, and think about how we describe people when we're just talking like everyday normal conversations, and we're trying to tell a story about something or a friend that and stuff. Don't you ever find it weird that we never ever describe white people? Think about it. I don't know what made me think about this, but every other race is always described as if it plays some sort of importance into the story. For instance, if I'm talking about Mark, I would be like, oh yeah, my buddy, yeah, he's black, and it's so casual how it just rolls out off the tongue, and how it's just ingrained for us, or my Mexican buddy Juan, and I'm not just saying the name. My friend, I actually know somebody named Juan. I'm not just being an asshole for our listeners out there listening, But isn't it funny that if I'm ever describing you, if I'm ever saying, oh yeah, this one time at Comic-Con, me and my friend Christian, I would never just be like, yeah, me and my white friend Christian.
Yeah. Well, and something indicative of that is even what, our friend sent me when he mentioned the white cop, because it is pertinent to that story that the cop was white, but if it was a different story, would he have said the cop was white? Like if it's not important,
right?
Like who knows? Like, even when we've been talking about this, I've been talking to friends of color or whatever, because maybe I feel like it's important to clarify that in the context of this conversation. But yeah.
Well, I think if it actually provides context to what is happening, such as George Floyd being a black man murdered by a white cop, that provides important context.
Yeah.
But the casualness of how we describe people in everyday story, like life, or you're just telling a story, or you're talking about a friend, and why do we do that? It's so ingrained in us, and that has to change.
Yeah.
We as a people have to change our preconceived notions of race.
Yeah.
And like how we view people.
And to also not deny that race exists. Because to say that we're all one race, we're the human race, this and that, it denies something very real. Black people experience racism because they're black.
Yeah.
Like if you say, well, we're all one race, we're all one people, then why are we discriminating against people of different color? Like, it exists. We should embrace our differences, not use them as a weapon against each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like white privilege. Sure, some people weaponize it, but what it is it's not an attack on white people. It's just an acknowledgement. An acknowledgement that we get away with certain things that other people don't because we have white skin. People treat us different. People, like, my fiance's Filipino, her family's Filipino. Filipino people, not every single one of them, but a lot of them want to look white. They bleach their skin. They do things to look more white. It's just kind of, I don't understand it, but that's just how it is, And I was even having a conversation with one Filipino person about what's going on right now, and they were saying, well, we came here and we're not treated that bad, and I tried to tell them, like, historically we're called a melting pot as America, but we have not treated immigrants well. We don't treat the Irish well, and they're white. Like look at our history. We do not treat immigrants well. We don't treat people well who are different than us. It's always happened. We've always forced people of color into poor neighborhoods, into projects, into places that have less. And that's just how it is. And then, we also have knee-jerk extreme reactions to things as well and try to fix it, but we overdo it. Like, we as a country can't find a balance.
Exactly. And one of the things, the term melting pot, would that not mean that the things that are thrown in there are then mixed together in an even proportion, right? And yet there's no balance to the class system in America. That why is the overwhelming majority of the wealthy in this country white? Why is that? Yeah. I could tell you why. Because this country was founded off the back of immigrants, off of black slaves, off of just various cultures, and it's just like so annoying, dude.
Yeah. Well, and then you have a lot of people that are just ignorant, and I don't mean that in like a negative way. Like, it's okay to be ignorant, but not willfully ignorant. Like I'm ignorant in a lot of things. I don't know a lot of things, but one thing I do know is how statistics work. And when people throw around statistics, I get very annoyed. Oh, this, but you do not give me a reason for why those statistics exist. And then even people report wrong statistics, and I just don't get it. Like, statistics is a good tool for a snapshot of something, but it doesn't inform much. And anybody who's taken a high-level statistics class knows that correlation, two things being related to each other, does not mean that one causes the other. You need to do extensive experiment research to prove causation. And people don't. They just say, oh, based on this study. Okay, a study is a snapshot. What does it mean? You can't interview 10 people from Sacramento, California, and 9 of them say they hate black people, and then say 9 out of 10 Americans hate black people. Number one, is sample size is way too small. Number two, you only did it in Sacramento. Number three, were they all white people? Were they white women? Were they black? Your sample size is very important. I can go to a campus and see a beehive in a tree, and then say all campus trees have beehives all across America. It's not true. It's Stop it with your terrible lies. Like, just because you don't understand how statistics work and anecdotal evidence, personal experience, it doesn't mean much. Just because you have a black friend who's never experienced racism doesn't mean that it's not the norm, because it is the norm. Listen to all the black voices right now telling you it's the norm. The 3 people that are successful that are telling you it doesn't happen and they can get out of it, they're not the norm. And yes, there are black people that go out looking to be victimized and aggrieved. They're not the norm either. Stop it, and stop comparing. Like, people love to compare. Oh, this guy was a mass murderer, white guy, and look, he just got arrested, and George Floyd got murdered for passing counterfeit money. Neither of those things are a death sentence. We don't need to compare that. We can look at George Floyd as an individual. I don't give a fuck about his criminal history. I don't care if he murdered anybody. If he did, he didn't deserve to die.
And isn't that a funny thing? Because that's like one of the big talking points, right? Is beforehand, this is probably this movement of Black Lives Matter, of police brutality and injustices happening. It feels different than before, right? Because you think about how people react before. People were like, well, what was he doing and stuff? And, a black man was murdered by a cop, but why? You know, they would always finish it with a but something.
What was he doing?
What was he doing? And then it comes out that he had a criminal history, but he was a criminal. You know, as if that's some sort of death sentence. Why do we normalize cops killing civilians? Why is that such a normalized thing?
Right.
And that needs to not be normalized.
Yeah. What you're talking about is something called victim blaming, and it's a very tell me if this sounds familiar. Oh, you got raped? Well, what were you wearing?
Yeah.
What did you do? Did you lead them on?
Yeah. Exactly. And dude, it's just like
yeah.
I totally understand. Maybe I don't necessarily agree with it so much, but I totally understand where people want to abolish our current state of like policing and stuff, because it feels like it's so wrong that the only way to make it better is to destroy it and rebuild it.
Well, there's an example of that happened in New Jersey years ago. A department fired all the police officers, and the next day they rehired them and made them redo all their training and everything else, and not all of them made it. They fundamentally changed their system and made a better community overnight by doing that.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe that is the answer. And so there's so many answers, there's so many solutions, and so many things that everybody can do. And that's kind of what I want to talk about at the moment. It is what we could be doing as individuals. In your neighborhoods across America, protests are happening, peaceful protests. Not all of them are riots. Not all of them are turning into looting and stuff. If you hear about it and you want to make a difference, go out there and show your unity. Show your black brothers and sisters that you stand with them, that they have an ally in all of this. And maybe I'm overstepping by saying this, but I want everyone to know that the Nerdy Boys are an ally of the Black Lives Matter movement. There's no doubt about that, right?
Yeah, no, definitely like the movement, the organization Black Lives Matter also has some very good ideas, but has some fringe elements that I find personally to be kind of concerning. But as a movement, yeah, Black Lives Matter is a fantastic movement that should be supported.
Right, yeah. I don't pretend to know how the organization operates, but I'm more or less talking about the movement.
Yeah, yep.
We are an ally of Black Lives Matter. We care about our black brothers and sisters. We love you guys. You guys are important. Every single last one of you. Every man, woman, and child. Your life matters, and you're not another statistic.
Yeah. And even if you don't feel comfortable going to protest, you're scared that you might get shot or by rubber bullets, or your car might get broken into and stuff like that. There are other ways to support these causes, definitely charities and things like that. If you feel that like posting on social media is helping, you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like, you're just a social justice warrior. You're just using your keyboard and typing and stuff. But it's expressing your voice. It's getting it out there that, maybe you have, just for instance, say I post something and I have the one black friend that he feels like he's completely alone, that he has nobody in this world, that he feels like the system is completely mounted against him. The police want to kill him, and he doesn't have very many options in life. But then he sees the one person that he respects or cares about, or even just knows, doesn't have to even have a high relationship with them, sees somebody talking out about these issues and showing their unity and showing that they care about him. That makes a difference.
Yeah.
So this whole thing of this whole notion, and it's a really big one in the sports world, the whole shut up and dribble.
Oh God! Lord
Shut up and
Abraham.
throw the
What
football, Kaepernick. Yeah. How is that working out for everyone now?
Yeah.
How is that working out, everyone? Because that's what I want to know.
I think if people choose to stay silent, I don't see a problem with it necessarily. Like I've seen like silence is complicity or whatever. Like I don't necessarily agree with that. Like if I'm donating to charities and stuff, I'm not posting that on social media. I don't do it for you guys to be like, oh look at yay. Like I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. I don't give a fuck if people think I'm racist because I don't post that. You don't know what I'm doing in my just like with Kanye West, right? What's he saying? What's he saying? You don't donate $2 million. Like shut the fuck up. If he wants to not say anything, let him not say anything. And Dave Chappelle is another one. He said, you know, people are like, well, I should be saying stuff. And he's like, why am I going to talk and distract from what these great people are doing? Like, this is their movement. If I say something, I'm taking away from that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And it's not always just about talking either.
Yeah.
And this especially goes out for pretty much the non-black community.
Right.
Anybody who isn't black, pretty much. And more specifically, white people.
Right.
It is a paramount. It's so important right now that we listen.
Yeah.
And not just listen to have the conversation, but truly understand what is being said. Listen to these people's life stories.
Yeah.
And don't be so quick to throw your input in. Listen to what they have to say and truly understand what they are saying.
Yeah.
Listen, guys.
It's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah,
is
because we have to.
Like, if you're on social media, you're not saying anything, and you're just watching what people are posting, self-reflecting. Self-reflection is very important. Like, even you and I, we both grew up in poor neighborhoods.
Yeah.
With a lot of people of color, Mexican people, people from all different backgrounds. And, you know, we can say, oh, well, we're not racist. We have black friends, blah, blah. But I've had thoughts that are consistent with how racists think. Not because I'm racist, but because that's a society we grew up in. You know, we grew up thinking, you know, this about certain people. And I was raised not to be racist. You know, I grew up when I lived in Ohio, very poor neighborhood. My two best friends were black. They said the N-word. I said it one time in front of my mom. I got the shit beat out of me. You know? Like, I was raised to not be racist. We grew up very liberal, very, friends with black people. But that doesn't change the fact that we still grew up in a society that overall is racist. Yeah. And we're taught racist ideas that we don't necessarily think are racist. We're just like, oh, well, that's how black people are, you know? Which is racist. But, like, acknowledging that and acknowledging where you've gone wrong and self-reflecting, you learn that, wow, I can't believe I was ever like that. I can't believe I had thoughts like that. I can't believe I've said the N-word. Like, I hear it now, and I'm just like, Jesus. Like, it's grating to me. Like, anybody white who says the N-word, what do we say about them? Oh, well, they just want to be black, right? But even that's like obviously they're being racist, but we shouldn't say, oh, they want to be black, because who honestly, as an adult, can say, I wish I was black? Yeah. Like, it's just, it's not a thing, you know, and really listening is important because you need to understand. That's the thing, even with white privilege. People don't understand what that means. People think it's an attack.
Yeah, exactly. Let me just interject right there, and because I've been thinking about that a lot, and I would be one of the people who was very ignorant when it came to that term of white privilege, and somebody saying I have white privilege, and I didn't know what that meant, right?
Because again, we both grew up poor. We're like, we don't have privilege.
Exactly. And I mean, I grew up poor, man. Like, dude, and I know you did too, and there would be times where, you know, my mom just wasn't around because she was working and she was a single parent.
Both of us single parents, yeah.
3 kids, doing her best to, provide for us. And, you know, I never was that kid that had like the coolest sneakers or the coolest clothes or any of that. I just had a good personality, you know, and, you know, a lot of things, you know, it's just there was just like a lot of things, you know, never had like all the food and stuff, never lived in the best neighborhoods. So when I used to be very ignorant, and I used to take offense to people sitting there telling me I had white privilege because I didn't understand what that meant. And it's not really till just now I feel like people are explaining what that means. And it's very, very important to know what having white privilege means.
Right.
Because it's not talking about your social economic standing in the world. That's not what they're talking about. Because I would be the one that like, I don't have fucking white privilege. Fuck you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I fucking grew up poor and I've worked for every fucking thing that I've ever had in my life. And I don't have a lot, but, you know, I've fucking worked and I've worked with my hands and done back-breaking work and stuff. And I've been through the same struggle as you. And what an ignorant statement to say some shit like that, you know?
Yeah.
And just not really understanding like what was it meant when people say you have white privilege.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that really helped me understand it was the idea that I'll never walk into a room and be the only person that looks like me. Like, I'll never have to experience that. You know, like, I don't have to worry about going to a certain town or a certain area because of how people might treat me, you know? Like, and that's something that black people have to discuss. Like, oh, should I go to this? Especially in where we live in Northern California, there's a lot of very conservative areas.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people of color are concerned sometimes going into certain neighborhoods because you don't know what could happen to you. Like, I've never had to think of that. You and I used to go for fucking 3-hour long walks at night, 2 a.m. and shit. But if a black person's out at 2 a.m, what's going to happen to them? We never worried about it.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, especially in Elk Grove, I mean, guaranteed they would have been pulled over at least once, you know, sitting there saying, hey, what are you doing out here? Well, you must be up to no good if you're out here at this time of night.
We've talked about it. We're like, oh, shit, like, it's past, like, technical curfew. Like, we might get stopped or something. But it never stopped us.
Yeah, and they've driven past us plenty of times.
Yeah. So it's like, that's what white privilege is. Like, think about black people as what they are, 13% of the population. They constantly are surrounded by people that don't look like them, that don't think like them, that don't talk like them. And people that constantly are trying to change them to be more like us or to dress different and act different. Like, we don't have to deal with that. Nobody's telling us we can't talk the way we talk. We can't wear the clothes we wear. Right. Don't sag your pants around here. Like, no one says that to us. White people who sag their pants, nobody says shit to them. Like, that's white privilege. And it's not like, oh, you're white, fuck you. Like, that's not what it means. Like, some black people might think that, but the majority saying white privilege just want you to understand that you have privileges as a white person.
Right, that aren't afforded to all races, such as being treated with dignity and respect by police officers. Yeah. Because, best believe, other races are not, Mm-hmm. And they're dehumanized and and strung out and embarrassed and it's humiliating and it's just really something that if you are a person and I can't really condemn people for saying it because I feel like up until now, I mean just recently, maybe a year or so, maybe 2, the term white privilege was never really explained. And I think now we're breaking down walls and having conversations that desperately needed to be had. And things like that are being defined and so people have a little bit better perspective Oh, I just realized too, I never finished what happened in that story earlier that I had said like there's the video of like a black man being or attempted to be detained by police officers and he was on the ground and they all had their guns drawn on him and this white woman laid herself on top of him knowing that because she was white, they were not going to shoot her. They were not going to start firing their guns into this man. Mm-hmm. So she felt that it was her duty to use. That is the perfect example of white privilege. Wow, what a way to tie that back into it. Awesome. I deserve a pat on the back. Anyways, what a magnificent way to illustrate white privilege, you know, and she used it to the best possible extent and save that man's life.
Yeah. Well, and if you want to talk about this is a combination of both white privilege and the inherent racism and discrimination in our country. Is like, think about, like, even this might even affect you in the future. Like, if your significant other is out with your baby, and people think the baby is not dark enough to be her kid, and they think she kidnapped it.
Yeah,
that happens to people, like, who adopt kids and stuff like that. People call the police on them.
Dude, oh my gosh. So we usually do a Keeping Up with the Nerdy Boy segment at the beginning of the podcast. So I recently moved into a new place, right? So on our way, she's in my car with my son driving, and she's ahead of me. She drives like a bat out of hell. And I'm in the U-Haul going a lot slower in the slow lane. And she's maybe about 5 minutes ahead. She calls me to say something to me. And all of a sudden, she's like, oh my God, I'm getting pulled over. And let me tell you, that is probably the worst feeling I've ever had in my life, dude. Like, my heart sunk into my chest, dude. And, like, luckily, when she went to go pull over, the police officer sped past her. So they weren't actually pulling her over. But for a minute, I fucking gassed that U-Haul, dude, so I can search for her. Because I was so fucking terrified of what was about to happen if she got pulled over. You know?
Yeah.
Technically, she, the car's registered in my name.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything was going to be stacked against her in that situation. Then if they look in the back seat, see my son, he's definitely a lighter skinned baby. And the exact situation you just said. Whose baby is that? That's not your baby. You know?
Yeah.
So then what happens then? It's just like, I was so scared. And it just felt like that one little moment lasted a lifetime, dude. And I will never be able to explain how I felt in that one moment to, like, the fullest extent. But I never want to feel like that again.
Yeah.
And it was fucking, like, terrifying as fuck, dude. And, yeah, it sucked.
Yeah. I mean,
really fucking sucked.
These are real life experiences, and, like, please don't, like, look towards the mainstream media for all your great insights into this, guys, because, I mean, they show you what makes money for them. That's just kind of how it is,
Yeah.
So
I think the best way you can do that is just start talking to people. Have those difficult and uncomfortable conversations, the one that makes your skin crawl a little bit and makes you question who you are as a person and makes you question things that you've said and things that come to mind and stuff like that and grow from there, and let's all get united. And there's so much more than things that we could be doing too. Probably the most important thing, and I've been guilty of, my vote don't count. It doesn't matter. They'll pass what they want to pass. But best believe, it matters. Oh, does it matter?
Yeah. Well, especially
so much.
Especially on a local level and in Congress. Like little things, think about on a local level, you're voting for things that are going to affect your neighborhood, your city, your state. Mm-hmm. And those are the most important things that affect your life every day. President Trump versus Joe Biden, they can only do so much, but they can do a lot more if you allow them to have their Congress. Like there are things that we can do as a country. Like, I don't think voting will change everything entirely.
No, but it's one step. It's the notion that it's one step at a time, and I truly believe that, because in the prime example is, how does each law ever start? It happens in one place and it goes from state to state to state. Happened with marijuana. Oh my God, what a radical idea! Like 10 years ago, fuck that. We're not gonna legalize the devil's lettuce and all that garbage.
Devil's lettuce,
or whatever the fuck they call it and shit, dude. And like, and all of a sudden it started with one place, Seattle and Colorado, and then all of a sudden California, and then once California did it, then the rest of the nation started jumping on board, and I think something like the statistic is averaged at like by 2023, 75% of the nation is going to be legalized marijuana and stuff. So with that notion, right? So there's a point to me bringing this up. So with that notion, you think about it, it starts in one place, and your place could be the one place it started at. And you can take solace in that, and you can take gratification to know that you were a part of the change, that you made a difference, and not just your life, and somebody else's life too. And because I do kind of want to break it down, but I don't feel like, I feel like a lot of times my thoughts are so scattered that I feel like you might be a better person to kind of help explain, because people are very often like under the assumption that the president has all this power, right?
Right.
That they have like endless supply of power, and it's the president is the one that makes everything happen. Can you help explain to us kind of the three branches of government and like how we get laws passed and how we can get them put on a ballot? I'm pretty sure you know that stuff, right?
Some of it. Well, as far as like things getting put on the ballot, it's more of a local thing.
Yeah.
But as far as like federal bills, because there's obviously difference between state laws and federal laws. Federal laws are so you have your three branches of government. Anybody who's watched the old like School Rock or whatever shit, like the bill then goes through the houses of Congress. So the president is the executive branch, right? They have to sign sign bills into law, but they don't make the laws. Congress makes the laws. You have your House of Representatives and you have your Senate, right? And so bills have to get like 2/3 or something, majority. Maybe it's just a majority, half a vote, 50% plus one of a vote in both houses to get passed through. And laws cannot violate existing laws that are set as precedents by the Supreme Court, which interprets the laws, right? So the Supreme Court interprets the laws, 1/3 of government. Congress makes laws, and the executive branch signs bills into law, right? And they can veto them, send them back, say you have to change this, whatever, and then I'll pass it. And there's a lot of things that go into it. But the president only has so much power, and like all this shit that he's going through with Twitter right now, he has no power to change this. There's existing laws. There's a doctrine that was written in 1996 when the internet came out that says that a business is not responsible for what its user, like an internet site is not responsible for what its users do, because that'd be like you say "fuck you, bitch" to me and I sue Twitter. I can't do that because of the law, right? And so President Trump, who wants to say that they can't censor him, well, I'm sorry, that your First Amendment bullshit doesn't work there, because they're their own private business. They have their rights as well. You agree to the terms of service, whatever. So, like, a lot of people get the Constitution very mixed up in the Bill of Rights and don't understand that your First Amendment rights, your Second Amendment, all those rights just mean that the government cannot infringe on them. Businesses can. They can tell you what you can and can't say. They can tell you have to wear a mask to go into their store. And and it's really stupid, because President Trump is this big First Amendment advocate because of, hey, churches should be able to open again because, hey, First Amendment. Okay, well, you don't understand the First Amendment either, President Trump, so.
Probably not.
Yeah. But also, like, on a state and local level, like, we have our own Supreme Court. We have our own, government structure as a state that makes bills happen because of lobbyists, special interest groups bringing things up, petitions, everything else. And, these special interest groups will lobby to get certain bills to try to have us vote on to make laws. And please don't get discouraged if, like, we try to pass some police reform and it fails. And it might fail next year, and it might fail the year after. Because people look at California, and if you're listening, you don't live in California, we're not this great blue state, okay? We have a lot of conservatives in this state. Marijuana failed to be legal 3 years in a row.
Yep.
Gay marriage failed to be legal 2 years in a row in California. We voted as a state against these things. We're a blue state when it comes to presidency. We overwhelmingly vote blue, but social issues take longer. Social issues take people changing their minds fundamentally.
Do you know why?
Go ahead.
I don't have fact for it, but I largely believe because people don't vote. I think
that's
a lot of I think if there was extensive studies done, I feel like the reasons that a lot of these progressive ideas get shot down so much, it's because the non-progressive people are the ones that are voting against it. And the progressive people, they have great ideas and they talk about it a lot, but they don't always show up to the ballots to vote for the actual issues or for the actual candidates that they want.
Well, I mean, it's something that we largely refer to as the silent majority. The majority of people might be in favor of these things, but they don't talk about it, they don't care, and they don't vote.
Yeah.
Whereas the fringes, people who are really against gay marriage and people who are really for it are the ones that are going to vote. Unfortunately, it takes a lot longer to change hearts and minds over time. So the people really against it are going to go out en masse and be like, fuck you for trying to change us. We can change on our own time. Don't force this shit on us. Which a little bit is understandable because when you try to force people to change, they'll go hide in their corner and they'll refuse. But when you start building understanding, trying to change hearts and minds, that's where a lot of this starts. Unfortunately, we're in a place where black people are really tired of trying to change people's minds. Like, it's not their responsibility to educate all of us. You know, it helps if they will work with us and try to help us understand, but it's not their job. And forcing them to continuously talk about all their shitty experiences and give us their perspective is kind of unfair to them too. Because who wants to sit there and be like, yeah, it sucks. Like, they don't want to complain, you know? A lot of them don't want to complain. They're just tired. Like, this is their life. Some of them have accepted it. Others really want change, but there's a balance, and it's our jobs as individuals to educate ourselves and to try to understand.
It's our job, exactly what you said, to educate ourselves, to progress, to understand others, and to influence change. It's all up to us, really. So basically, the main takeaway, right, is if there isn't already a petition started for an idea for a new law or something.
Well, there groups like ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, Black Lives Matter, like these are special interest lobbyist groups that will petition with lawmakers to make change. Like you'll get things that will be, you know, even like one of the things obviously right now is defunding police, abolishing police, whatever. Like that's an idea. Some of the things that are on there are kind of non-starters. That'll never happen. Nancy Pelosi and like Joe Biden have kind of separated themselves from those ideas. But it's a start, you know. There's a conversation to be started about, you know, what we can do. And we as a people will ultimately decide whether we do that or not. Right.
So, I mean, joining various groups, petitioning, get out there, get signatures on the petitions, even though sometimes, you oftentimes walk past people and ignore them. You know, the people who are out there gaining signatures on petitions for, usually like something to do with criminal justice and stuff like that. And a lot of times we ignore them, we walk past them, we don't acknowledge them. But those are people that are really affecting change. And you know, next time you see some of those people, ask them what they're petitioning for and have a conversation with them, because this might be the very thing that they're petitioning for. And then if that's something that interests you and that you would like to help further that cause, then that's up to you, you know. And getting out there and voting, that's probably the single biggest thing that people need to understand, that they have power as an American citizen to influence change through their vote. And I think somewhere along the lines, and I don't know where this exactly originated from or started, or if it was intended to pass down that way, but there's a huge movement, and I've been a part of it, where we just feel our vote doesn't matter anyways because, government's going to do what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, of course, a lot of people feel like that.
But at the end of the day, it's just not true.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, look at Gavin Newsom's decisions on coronavirus, and you can tell how influenced he is by wanting to be reelected or something like that. Like, because like he does constant polling to see how people feel about what he's doing, and the reason why he shut us down the way he did is because a lot of people are afraid, and the reason why we're opening up now is because a lot of people want us to open up. More people are still afraid, but like our economy has to recover. We have to recover. But yeah, it's definitely like one of those things where it's like it's easy to feel like your vote doesn't count, but at the same time, if you feel like your vote doesn't count and don't want to vote, call your district attorney, call your local Congress people. That's another way to make a difference.
Show up to city hall meetings and question these elected officials.
Yeah,
who are at the end of the day, the word politician is put on a pedestal, but they are civil servants. They are here to serve the people of our country. And oftentimes they fall so far short of that and are not held responsible for it.
Right. And you hold them responsible by voting them out.
Exactly. These people, we want to influence change. Look at the people who have been in office for 30, 40, 50 years. And you have to start questioning, you've been in office for so long, yet these things are not changing. And it's the same across most things. Why do you think becoming like a top line politician is so hard to do? Because they already have their core group of people that
right. Well, they also have money, which a lot of newcomers don't have. So.
I'm not saying everyone should just become a politician. What I'm saying is we need to vote out the politicians that are already there, because obviously they're not making a fucking difference, dude. And yes, that doesn't stand for all of them.
Yeah.
There are ones that, do the right thing, and, they fight for equality and fight for justice for all, and, they fight for the nation's creed.
Ultimately,
that doesn't hold true at all.
Yeah.
But,
ultimately it's us as a people. We get complicit. We get used to the way things are, and we move on. And that's kind of like, how long until the George Floyd story goes away and people are just tired of it and done, and we move on and continue on with the same shit we've been going through? Yeah. How long until someone else, another black man, is murdered by a white cop, and then we're back at it? Like, things like, this isn't the first time. This isn't the first time a black person's been killed, but this was the perfect storm, because we're all locked inside. We're all frustrated already. And then this happens. I mean, you can think about, the black man who was shot in the back in South Carolina, and that was lost in the shuffle. People knew about it, but nobody had time to really connect with it because of everything else happening in the world at the time.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of research on that, and like just learning about how great of a guy he was, it really that shit pissed me off, but you can't really do anything about it because everyone just kind of moves past it because there's so much going on in our daily lives. But
yeah,
now,
and then people get so riled up when a new event does happen, and then they keep the energy for a week, maybe 2, maybe 3.
I feel like,
and then they lose interest. We move on, and then the next victim happens, and it's just it's a deplorable, just disgusting, vicious cycle that we're stuck in. And I think now more than ever, it really does feel different. Like.
Yeah.
Right now we have a window of opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. And in the sports world, when a team is at their top peak performance, they usually refer to that as their championship window. What that means is it's their couple years window that they have the opportunity to compete for a championship. So right now feels like our championship window to affect change, to really make a difference and make humongous strides in equality for everyone. You know, and the time is here, and I just hope we don't squander it and wait for the next tragedy to happen before people start doing something. And like I said, it does feel different. It really feels much different this time more than it ever has.
Yeah, I think
in my lifetime at least.
I think the reason for that is because like you look at like Ahmaud Arbery, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Breonna Taylor. Those happened like either at the very beginning of lockdown or just before, right, where we're all still living our lives. This happened while we're all locked up, can't socialize, can't see our friends, can't go to work, might lose our house, might lose our job. We're already all frustrated and pissed off, and that's why you see this mobilization. And please, people, stop using fucking facetious, garbage, fallacious arguments online about, oh, yeah, you can go protest with guns about opening the, about, because you can't get a haircut, but now, you're going to condemn all these. Shut up. Both protests are warranted. I don't care. Like, people who want their businesses to reopen because they're losing their fucking houses have every right to protest, just like these people have their rights to protest. Everyone has a right to protest. I hate seeing people comparing these things like it's fucking... Yeah. Stop it. Focus on the main important fucking shit, which is what we're trying to do here, Like, these conversations that need to be had, no one gives a fuck. Oh, you protested with a gun because you wanted a haircut. No, they protested with a fucking gun and got cited for not social distancing, got arrested for not social distancing or wearing masks. What's happened at these protests? No one's getting cited or fucking arrested for not social distancing or wearing masks. They're getting fucking shot with rubber bullets and arrested for being black. Like, both are wrong. But anyway, sorry. I hate when people try to compare things like this. Like, they're not the same. Like, why are you going to say these people don't have a right, but these people do? Like, what?
Right, yeah.
Just stop.
Yeah, it's...
Yeah. Social media, for me, is kind of a cesspool of, like, uninformed people who have very extreme positions on things, which is fine. Like, they're allowed to have those positions, but, like, when you're trying to have a real conversation about how to make actual change, it's not good to just use bad arguments. Right. Like, I don't know. But, yeah.
So... What were we talking about?
We're talking about like how this is a perfect storm.
For
this change.
It is, and it's sad. I mean, it's such a horrific tragedy that it even had to come to this, right? And it's just now's the time, guys. If you guys feel empowered to do something to make a difference, and we've already listed many things, so get out there and protest. If you have the means to donate money to an organization that you believe in, not just an organization because that's what the one everyone talks about. Do it in one that you personally have looked into and you believe in that they're going to allocate the money correctly.
Yeah, one of them that I donated to that I saw was when, I don't know if Colin Kaepernick started it or was just, he donated a lot of money to it, it's Know Your Rights Camp.
Yeah, that's his.
Yeah, so, and obviously people want to argue about the NFL and need to apologize to Kaepernick and all this stuff, which, have at it. Do you say what you want?
Yeah, I mean, that's a completely, it's related, but it's a different conversation.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like
that's not the conversation. The conversation right now is police brutality, oppression,
I think,
and I can't even think.
Yeah, criminal justice reform.
Sorry.
And
yes, I just had a complete mind blank right there.
Social reform. Yeah, these are the things we need to focus on because people love to argue online like about all these organizations with their statements. Oh, they're just virtue signaling. They don't mean it.
And
prove it.
And don't get me wrong. The conversations about Colin Kaepernick need to happen.
Yeah, they're important too, but they're not necessarily
pertinent. Have that conversation in the context of that conversation.
Yeah.
Like, this conversation is separate from that one.
Right.
Because that is a big deal that needs to be addressed. Just because we're saying it's a separate conversation. We're not saying it's not important.
Right. Yeah.
I just don't want that to get confused.
A lot of these other conversations are important, but in the context of their own.
And also need to happen.
Yeah.
But this one needs to happen, and this is what we're talking about.
Yeah. Just because, companies are coming out with statements related to the protest doesn't mean those statements are related to what needs to happen. Like, because they just cause other arguments that are unrelated, really. Like, why is it related to this movement that, they don't prove what they're saying? Like, whatever. Like,
for instance, the best way to explain this to anybody that may have a little bit of confusion is the whole thing about police brutality against, black people. Mm-hmm. And then somebody like Ben Shapiro talks about, well, how come nobody cares when there's black on black crime? That is an important issue that everyone needs to talk about, but that's a separate issue. And why are you even bringing it up in response to this?
And they're so different because the only way to make actual change for the whole country when it comes to police reform and everything else is white people have to be willing to help.
Exactly.
Because black people can't get that done on their own.
So basically the I would say maybe 6 to 10 main points you need to take away from this podcast. White people,
listen.
One, you need to listen. 2, you need to speak out against these injustice that are happening all the time, every day that are happening. What was I going to say? Fuck, dude, I hella just forgot. Vote.
Call your district attorneys, your local congress people, your governor, your mayor, especially that idiot fucking Mayor Steinberg. Call him and cuss him out or something. No.
Get out there, demonstrate peacefully if you can.
Mm-hmm. Donate to charities that you believe in that help underprivileged people, children, whatever else. Just
have the difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm. Not just with people of color, not just with your white friends, with your family.
Yeah.
Like you might have racist parents. You love them, it's fine, but it does mean you shouldn't talk to them and try to help them understand.
More takeaways. Responses like "All Lives Matter" is not an appropriate response to somebody saying "Black Lives Matter."
Yes.
Let's just get that straight. That's just not an appropriate response.
Again, it's a context thing. With no context, of course, all lives matter. Nobody's saying that. In the context of Black Lives Matter, it means Black Lives Matter equally because we've treated African Americans and people of color as if their lives mean less, which they don't. They mean the same. They're people just like you and me. We all deserve the same rights, but we treat black people as if they don't deserve it, as if they're expendable. That's why it's a thing. So, again, you might not understand why all lives matter means, it's an insult, but now you...
Another takeaway would be that white privilege does not pertain to your social economic standing in this world, that it has more to do with privileges that you're given that other races are not, such as dignity and respect by police disproportionately, things like that. When it comes to the criminal justice system, people have white privilege. It's just things that are true, and you can use your white privilege to affect change. It's true. Another
takeaway is, of course, not all police are bad, but they work in a system that is. And I'm someone who supports law enforcement and supports Black Lives Matter. And some of you might hear that and say, wow, you're a racist because you support law enforcement any way whatsoever. But hey, I believe that we need law enforcement in this country, but the system needs to be completely redone.
Oh yeah.
To benefit, because I don't know. You can say what you want about me, but yeah, that's another takeaway is that not all police are bad. We know, but again, in the context of this, it doesn't matter because the system isn't right.
Right, yeah, because the system is broken.
So
yeah, I mean, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about pertaining to this?
Not really. It's just please try to stay focused. Like I would strongly encourage everyone to not argue on social media because it's kind of not worth it. But in terms of a discussion, have open discussions with your friends and family and everyone else. But try to stay on topic. Don't let these distractions come in about this or that. Like, focus on.
I know you might have been listening to this podcast and you're like, holy shit, these guys trying to stay on topic.
Yeah, we get off topic a lot, but that's because it's so easy to. But we always come back.
Right,
We're always coming back to the main point. And another thing that people will want to talk about that'll distract you is white guilt. You might listen to us and think we have white guilt. I'm not guilty for being white, and I'm not proud of being white. Like, I don't understand racial pride. I never understood that. I'm proud to be white. I never got that. But hey, if some people are, whatever. I don't think it makes you racist, but whatever. I'm a white person who understands I have privilege, who understands that things need to change, but I don't go around like being like apologizing to black people for having privilege or apologizing to people because I'm like, I don't have guilt. I'm just white. I was born this way. I have a small dick too. But I don't feel guilty about that. My lady likes. No, I was kidding. But
oh my god!
Like again,
that went sideways.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting.
Again, like people will try to make these arguments. Oh well, you're just a guilty white person. That's why you said everything you said. Okay, even if I am, does that change what needs to happen? No, it doesn't. So,
nope.
Again, that's the important thing. We need to change our system. We need to have it more equitable, and we need to really start with understanding, appreciating, and empathizing with other people.
Right, and so it's really in its infancy stages at the moment. But a friend of mine, Dennis, is attempting to like create his own organization and like invited me to be a part of it, which I'm pretty excited about. So like the title is kind of trollish, right? His reason behind making it, but it's like an anagram, right? Where it's like abbreviations of what it stands for. That's an anagram, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. So it's literally what? Like W-A-T, not like W-H-T or W-H-A-T. It's W-A-T. And so like, it's kind of funny. Like he's explaining to me, like he's, it's like, cause it's like, if you get counter protesters or stuff, you could just, and they're like sitting there screaming things like all lives matter, blah, blah, blah. You could just yell out what, just like to mess with them, because he's a very trollish person. But the meaning behind the organization is actually pretty like empowering, I feel like. And maybe I don't necessarily agree with like the name and stuff like that. But it's walking and talking. That's what it stands for. We walk so we can be heard, and we walk so we can be seen, and we talk so we can be heard. Through like conversations, we can, I forget like the exact mission statement, but basically create more like understanding, transparency, and like unite kind of communities, and it could be like a banner that anybody can be a part of kind of thing. And like I said, it's very much in its like infancy stages and stuff, and I'm pretty excited to see like where it goes. And if it doesn't, then I'll probably try to create my own, because it's like I feel so strongly about like what's going on, and the most important thing that I can say that you guys should take away from this podcast is don't lose your energy on this subject. Don't let this subject fade into the night and something else happens. Be proactive and try to do your best to make a difference. Because Dennis knows some city hall council members and stuff, and so we're talking about seeing if we can get like an open forum and stuff to talk with city council, and
Yeah.
try to find some solutions. Although, I'm sure they're working pretty tirelessly to try to do that now themselves. But I definitely think in this sort of circumstances, the public should very much be involved with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Something else I'll add too is like, if you see like a black person, don't just try to strike up this conversation with them. Like, it might be good intentioned as a way to try to learn and understand, but like, they're not just like public sounding boards for you. Like, I'll go to. So I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I have a gym at my work, so I'll go to the gym after I'm off work. And there's one of the guys who like cleans up and stuff, and he'll be in there working out on his like break. He's a black guy, but I don't feel like I should be talking to him, being like, oh, what do you think of the protest? What do you think of it? Like, because I don't think that's his job to tell me those things.
Well, no, I don't think that there's anything wrong with. I mean, it really depends on your own personal comfort level. To be honest, like if you feel comfortable talking to strangers about stuff,
yeah,
I think you should.
If they're willing to, though.
Yeah, if they're willing to, don't ever force somebody into talking about something that they don't want to talk about. Obviously,
right? That's
pretty simple, like rules.
Yeah.
And I just think me personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I do think that there's a way you approach it for sure.
Yeah, I guess the setting and the context are important too. Like, if you're walking through a grocery store and you just see someone, like, you shouldn't be like, hey, you, like,
yeah,
at least to me. But like, if you're like at the gym
or
or basketball court or something.
No, I definitely think I don't think it necessarily matters the setting. I just think it matters how you preface like trying to talk to them. I think what matters more is like, you could just preface it like, I don't have a lot of people I can talk to about this, and I just with everything going on, like, just like try to have a conversation. If they say they don't have time, but thanks for the time, have a great day.
Yeah. Well, like,
or however you want to preface, everyone has a different way of prefacing something like that. However you feel comfortable prefacing it, I just think like you can approach people. I think we have this like weird idea that just because they're a stranger doesn't mean like we can't not talk to them.
Yeah. No, I just mean like if someone's like shopping, like I feel like you're like inconveniencing them, like just trying to like interrupt what they're doing. Whereas like if you're in a setting where there's going to be conversation, like if you're like at a basketball court or something, like you guys talk,
Right.
Or like you're like even at the gym, like people talk like to each other. Like, so I guess my example wasn't very good because like we're just chilling there and we have like had small conversation, but like, yeah, at the same time,
yeah. But yeah, no, it's definitely on yours and the other person's comfort level too. Like I feel like no offense, I just don't feel like you would be the kind of person that would just like strike up somebody randomly.
Right.
Like I feel like you would do more of somebody that you already know, or not like super personally know, but like you've had some sort of interaction with that person.
Right. Well, even then, like I don't know if I would necessarily like try to strike up a conversation because like I don't know, I have weird things in my mind about like I feel like I'm bothering someone or like that's my own personal issue, so
yeah, but I would definitely agree with don't ever force the conversation. Like if you can tell they're uncomfortable having it, or if you can tell like, or they even say like I don't have time, like you shouldn't be like, oh wow dude, like blah blah blah.
Oh yeah, of course
yeah, that'd be like really rude, kind of disrespectful. So
yeah you just approach things in general with an open mind, like try to understand other people's perspectives and not dismiss them.
Right, yeah, exactly. Just because you have a preconceived notion of something doesn't mean like when you have these conversations too, you guys have to go in with an open mind.
Yeah.
You can't go like holding on to your guns pretty much, and if you have the open mind and open heart, you open yourself up to change, and like you open yourself up to understanding somebody better, and you open yourself up to just having just an overall better conversation, I feel.
Yeah.
Whereas if you already have these strong ideas like, Sean does, I feel like maybe his conversations wouldn't be as productive as mine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and he also says things like, "Oh, well, I listen to all sides and I do this and this." It's like, dude, you literally listen to people on the far right, like
I think he confuses talking to people on sides as to listening to people who look different.
Yeah, like
think about it though, because like the things and languages that he says, he's like, well, I could point out plenty of black people who say this, and this, but okay, those are already people who align themselves with the same ideals that you align yourself with.
Like,
so you're not opening yourself to some greater sort of conversation or understanding. You're pretty much having a conversation with yourself.
You're trying to prove you're right, not understand the other side and be open to it. Because like he'll be like, oh yeah, I'm open to the other side, but people can't prove this. Like, dude, that's the worst way to have any argument is to argue things that are unprovable.
Right.
Like that you've already lost. Yeah. And like, I'm sorry, dude, you listen to people who practice arguing for a living. Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro. These are people that are very well-informed people, very educated people, but they have their opinions, and they know how to argue them. Whereas the people that they're arguing with don't prepare for that. Like, they just don't. They don't sit there and say, what are they going to say when I say this? If they say this, I'll say this. If they say... That's what those people do.
Right, yeah. They'll say, I'm going to say this, and they can have 1, 2, or 3 responses. Mm-hmm. And to response 1, I will say this. To response 2, I will say this. And to response 3, I will say this. Yep. And most people do not think that far ahead.
And they win arguments because they prepare. They know how to appeal to other people's sense of logic, sense of ethics, or sense of emotion. Yep. And that's how they win arguments. It's not because they know everything. And
they not only that, but they know how to
manipulate people.
Yeah, manipulate and control the flow of a conversation back into their favor. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't just go into responses 1, 2, and 3. So then it branches down into, okay, response 1, I gave my response to that number 1. Now they can have 3 more responses. And then how do I loop it back around to my original response? Yeah. So then it makes it look like what they said only can prove my original point. So it basically goes down a little ladder and then loops back around. Yep. And then same thing with avenue number 2. It's going to loop back around eventually. They understand and they are a master of their crafts. That's what it is.
Right.
It's not that they're necessarily right or wrong. It's just they're very good at debating.
Yeah.
And they understand the basic principles of it, and they understand how to do it.
Right. And they also understand how to manipulate statistics.
Yep.
And so, yeah. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up our conversation.
Yep.
If you think we should stay on our lane and only talk about nerdy shit, please don't listen to us anymore.
Yeah. There's no more such thing as, shut up and dribble the ball.
Yeah. So anyway, we will talk about nerdy stuff again, but we'll also do more of these when we feel like it's important to do so. So yeah.
Also, if you guys do want to reach out and engage us in, this specific topic and ask us our opinions about something, or maybe show us a viewpoint that we didn't originally have or whatever, we're not looking to have some heated debate or argument first off, but we're definitely open to having an open dialogue with anybody.
Yeah.
So you can reach us on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
Mine is at nerdyboyinhuman.
Mine is Captain Hot Sauce. It's CPT_hot sauce.
Yeah.
And then you can always just reach us through the actual Nerdy Boys Reviews Twitter page as well.
Yeah. Even like with our friend who, we talked about, who was using kind of racist language. Like, I let him say his piece and I didn't argue with him. Like, even on my post on my page, like, I didn't argue. Like, I discuss with him. I'm very respectful of other people's opinions, even if I disagree with them. But that's just how it is. So if you guys want to have conversation, we can always have conversation. You can reach out to us. Nerdy Boys Reviews officially did not put out any statement, just because I feel like it wasn't really our place to. We both put out individual statements on our Facebooks, and this is kind of our official statement podcast. So, but yeah, I think that wraps us up, and we hope you guys enjoyed, and please engage with us if you can, even on our own Twitter, Nerdy Boys Review. And that's everything. So we are your hosts. I'm Christian.
And I'm Scott.
And we didn't prepare to end this, so you guys just have a good one.
All right.
Stay safe, and we love you.
We love you. Yay.
Thanks for tuning in to the Scott and Kristian Show.
Da da da.